Hello and welcome to my hands-on review / workflow demonstration for the brand new long exposure app, Even Longer. And just to be clear, Even Longer is the name of the app. It's not anything to do with the length of the video. Now, in my previous video, I covered Even Longer's headline features, which are raw shooting and automated frame averaging. And today I'm going to be exploring the user experience and workflow side of things, focusing mainly on how to achieve a decent raw exposure, because shooting in raw on your iPhone can be intimidating and challenging. And with a long exposure app, one of the last things you want is to commit to a 5, 10 or 15 minute or longer exposure, only to discover after you've waited for it to finish that it's completely overexposed or underexposed. Plus, I get to show you a brand new bracketing feature which wasn't available while I was filming my last video. So let's jump into Even Longer. This is its main interface and it looks fairly busy, but it's actually pretty rudimentary. There's definitely lots of room for refinement and improvement from a design, layout and workflow perspective, because currently there is a lot of back and forth that can feel clunky and not much in the way of visual cues or feedback. But in terms of actual features, I do think that there is enough here to help you make the pictures that you want to, which is the most important thing. So when I want to make a photo, I will use the grid and level if I need to, and I'll usually leave the app to focus by itself, but sometimes I will tap to focus just to confirm that it's in the right place. And while a reticle does pop up, I would like it to remain on the screen as a visual reminder of where the focus is. Next, I'll set my exposure, and unlike in most other camera apps, Even Longer will not take an exposure reading from where you tap. It's always going to simply expose for the scene in general, with your only input as a photographer being exposure compensation. Now, I usually like a lot more control over my settings when I'm shooting in RAW, but here I'm actually happy for the app to do it for me because it always does what I would do anyway. You see, it takes advantage of the fact that you're always going to be on a tripod, so it's been programmed to use the longest shutter speed and the lowest ISO possible for every single shot. So knowing the ISO is virtually always going to be at the base value, I look at the shutter speed here and use both my experience as someone who shoots in RAW on my iPhone almost every single day and the histogram to determine whether or not I need to compensate. And something you can do to check that your exposure is okay before you commit to your full capture time is to take a 3-second test shot. And to do that, just open the capture settings menu and change the capture time to 3 seconds. And while there is a vast amount of capture times to choose from, which is great, having to spend time tapping through them is another workflow aspect that could be made a lot more efficient. And I'd also like to see the whole menu when my phone is in landscape, because while I don't change my image format often, I've occasionally switched from RAW to JPEG and then forgotten to change it back because there's no format displayed on the main UI as a reminder, and it's cut off in the capture menu when in landscape. So having taken a 3-second test shot, I know I'm good to go for my longer capture time. Underneath, you've got the option to save interims. So for example, say you've set a 5-minute total capture time, you can choose to also save a file every minute or 2 minutes. And there's a couple of reasons you might want to do this. First, you can use interims as insurance. So say you're 4.5 minutes into your 5-minute exposure and some dog comes along and knocks your tripod over. You'll have that interim safety net already saved. And another reason is artistic. Maybe once the full 5-minute capture has finished, you decide that was too long and you actually prefer the one saved at 3 minutes. So interims is a fantastic feature and one that I've not seen in any other slow shutter app, and one that I personally have turned on all the time. Something else I have turned on all the time is this 2-second timer, because this prevents camera shake from when you tap the shutter. Next, you probably spotted the brand new parallel bracketing, and this is another top tier feature because as much dynamic range as 12-bit RAW files have, you do get scenes where the exposure range is simply too great for one single capture. And here the key word is parallel, because traditional bracketing captures photos at different settings in succession. But this isn't practical with long exposures because things are moving and you're going to have nightmares with merging and ghosting. Instead, parallel bracketing captures two photos simultaneously, so you get the exact same photo twice at different settings. And let me show you how this works with the most extreme example. Here I've got a very bright outdoor area on the left and a very dark indoor area on the right. And Even Longer has opted for a shutter speed of around 1/800th of a second, which would underexpose the interior and overexpose the exterior. But this isn't Even Longer's fault, because no single shutter speed would be suitable for this situation. So what I can do is choose to expose for one area of the photo and then compensate for the other with bracketing. In this case, I want to expose for the bright exterior, so by decreasing the exposure compensation by one stop, the shutter speed changes to around 1/1600th of a second, which is much more appropriate for the outside, but this indoor area will now be massively underexposed, so I can come to parallel bracketing and choose +3 stops, which should give me a shutter speed of around 1/200th of a second, which is still a little dark, but as I said, this is a very extreme example. And if you're struggling to follow along and you aren't sure what a stop of light is, I highly recommend you check out my full video on iPhone bracketing, where I take you through it step by step. So having set +3 stops, I can just tap the shutter, and when the capture is finished, I get 2 photos. The next job is to take them into Lightroom or whichever software you use for HDR and merge them together. If you are using Lightroom, just select them both and hit Ctrl-H on your keyboard. And since the photos were captured simultaneously, there's no need to worry about ghosting. And after hitting merge, we get our HDR DNG file with a nice even exposure we can tweak further without issue. And if I try to do the same thing on the originals, oh dear. Finally, once your capture is complete, there's nothing in the way of a gallery of any sorts. You just get your most recent photo, which honestly is fine by me. I understand that developer Mario is probably trying to keep his app as lightweight and as efficient as possible, so it's not really a big deal. And that's pretty much it for Even Longer. The only other thing that I want to mention is how, as well as saving to your camera roll, the app will also now save to your iPhone's files, so you've essentially got backups for all of your photos, which is never a bad thing. So then, I definitely think Even Longer is a game changer, and I think it deserves as much attention as it can get. So make sure you share both of my videos about it to make as many iPhone photographers aware of it as possible. So that's it. And next week, as part of Slow Shutter Month, I'll be covering another slow shutter app for the iPhone, which at this moment in time is probably going to be Slow Shutter Cam. But I am a magpie, so if something shiny comes along, I will be diverted to that. But anyway, stay tuned, find out what's coming next week as part of Slow Shutter Month. And thank you so much for watching. Take care, stay curious, and Becker and Ozzy Buna, Nabdi Buna.